I remember like middle school or something like that, and a bunch of kids like being like 90s movie type of shit where it's like, oh, let's go smoke some cigarettes, and then we're all like behind like a Coke machine or something, and then we're all smoking them, and I was just like, this sucks. But
Well, like when you see people smoke cigarettes, it's like the coolest looking thing ever, but it's like literally just tar. Like it's the
yeah.
grossest. Like I know what people do. They do these things called hemperettes,
Okay.
where there's CBD cigarettes, where it's just
Mhm.
CBD in them. So it's like it doesn't get you high, but it kind of gives you that kind of like that same buzz a cigarette might give you.
Okay.
Um, which those are cool, but yeah, cigarettes. It's just and like I've known people who like, have the thing, the second
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah,
You ever
yeah.
see someone hit like smoke a
I
cigarette
have
with that
actually.
thing? It's like, oh, so gross, man. Well, hey, it's great having you here, man. You've been fucking busy.
Oh yeah, fuck yeah, man. More than I thought I would be. I never even thought Bonded was gonna be back, so here we are.
Oh my God, it's like it's been Jesus. It's been over 10 years
Yeah,
since a
so for
release. And
for
but for
me,
you
yeah,
specifically, it's been what, 15, 16,
I think 14 years.
14.
Yeah, I believe Exile to Earth, the second album, was released in 2010. So yeah, 14 years.
Yeah. What's it like to be back on the grind? Is it like nostalgic in a
A
sense?
little bit. I think it's good to be back with my buddies and playing music again, specifically Juan, which is he's been there since day one. And we always talked and everything was cool. Like, just catch up with each other as life went on and we all became adults and all that shit. And but to be in a band with him again, it just brings back like memories because Bonded started when I was I think right after high school for me, but the rest of the guys were just in high school still. Um,
Damn.
so to have those memories again and be like, oh shit, and going back to because we're still doing stuff at Juan's house and like going back to Juan's house and like where it all started in the garage and all that shit. And I mean, times were completely different back then than they are now, drastically for the music industry, for bands, for everything. So doing that and like there's a good like energy there, being like, oh, this is so cool, and like the nostalgia. But at the same time, it's like cool. Let's kind of like work on because everybody evolved in a way. Like Juan never stopped playing guitar. He's a fucking machine. And now we have Conan from Ex Mortis as lead guitar, and that motherfucker's a fucking machine. And
Killer.
like, and then we have Steven, our drummer, which is a death metal drummer. He's been in all my other projects. I done stuff outside of Bonded after I left. It's mostly studio stuff, and it's mostly like
Agnoxia. Did I say that right?
Agnoxia. Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Agnoxia. I also did Macrocosm, which is this, um, and it's more like death thrash and it has more death metal influences. And I tried to do my vocals completely different because I didn't want to be like Bonded 2.0. But anyways, he's the same drummer, and that he's a death metal drummer. So bringing that into the equation is fucking insane. And then we have Jerry from the second album. He helped me write a lot of the Exile to Earth stuff, so it's cool to have him on board.
That's so awesome. Now, for like in terms of singing like the new Bonded record, like it must be weird going from the side projects to this. Will you be taking some of the influence from that and bringing it to Bonded, or is it just straight, I just want it to be a classic Bonded by Blood vocals?
So I'm bugging around with both things, and I think both things sound really cool. But I'm trying to bring the nostalgia back because I mean I'm doing the reason that we brought Bonded back was for the fans really. People every time I released anything with any other project, everyone was like bring Bonded back or do something with Bonded, and I was like I don't know if that's ever gonna happen. And so when we did decide to bring Bonded back, we didn't even know if we were gonna make any new music. We just were gonna do that one reunion show. And then it turned into this big old thing because everybody enjoyed it and everybody was like, hey. And then we started getting offers to do so many different things. Um, and then when we started talking about actually writing music, and I started like composing stuff and messing around with vocals and all that stuff, I'm like, oh, cool. I still kind of can do that old school Bonded stuff, but with a new twist. It's kind of like in between Macrocosm. If you hear my Microcosm stuff,
Yeah.
it's a little bit not as like Bonded. It's closer to Bonded than Ignoxia. and but I still reel it in to be that nostalgic bonded feel.
Yeah, and that's really cool to hear, man. And I think like that's honestly the best case scenario. Now, you were talking about that reunion show. I'm just curious, what was that initial conversation like that led to that reunion show? Like, where was it in a group chat? Were you drinking with someone?
So for that, so when I had done Agnoxia, which Agnoxia, if people don't know, let me give you a little bit of a background. I had like a core base of musicians. Some of them were already in Macrocosm. It was during the pandemic and all that was going on. And I was just, I had so much stuff. Like I was stuck at home. I needed to do music and I wanted to do something different. And so I hit up a couple of friends that did music and they're like, hey man, you guys want to record? I have this idea. You guys want to record these few songs for me? They're like, yeah, yeah. So they gave me the bare bones of stuff, and I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna ask these guys that I know. I know a lot of like pretty cool like lead guitarists that I knew from the scene back in the day. Hopefully, they're down to do some guest leads. And I hit all of them up. I hit up Conan. I hit up Alex, uh, the ex lead guitarist for Bonded. At the same time, I hit up Juan. Who else did I do? Balmore from Novarain and XX Mortis and uh, Eric from Vector, and they all said, "Yeah, let's fucking do it." Blah blah blah. And first of all, I'm humbled that they all said yes. That was super cool, and that's what kickstarted me talking to Alex again and Juan in a more like buddy buddy type of way instead of just like, "Hey man, how you been?" Blah blah blah, and we just kicked the idea around as a joke, like, "Hey, what do you guys think? Like if we brought Bonded back together, right? Ha ha ha." And we knew it was going to be hard only because uh, I don't know what had happened between their lineup between the aftermath and what they were doing now.
Mhm.
But from what Juan was telling me, he's like, oh well, we're not doing much anymore. We haven't done anything since 2012. Like they never released any music. I think they played a few shows here and there, but it wasn't anything like. I think the drummer or Carlos, our old drummer, he lived or lives in Oregon now, and has been living for the past 9 years. And then there was a little bit of drama with that. I don't know if you know all that.
A
There's a
little
little
bit.
yeah
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
There was a
I
little bit
do.
of
I
drama
do.
with that. Then the old vocalist lives in San Antonio, I think now. So everybody was all over the place. Their bassist of that lineup, I think, lives in Mexico, TJ somewhere, I think. I'm not 100% sure. So
Wow.
everybody lived somewhere else except Juan. Juan still lived down the street from me. And so he's like, no, well, I don't think we're doing anything. And then so we're like, okay, well, if everybody's on board, we're open to do it. And so we talked about it a few times. It actually took like about maybe a year and a half before it actually became okay, let's fucking do it. And I think it was during the time where Alex didn't know if Holy Grail was still a thing. And so I remember him being like, I don't know, like we're writing for Holy Grails and I want to focus on that. And I was like, that's cool. And then eventually he hit me up and was like, hey man, like I don't think Holy Grail's a thing anymore. So let's go full on with Bonded. And I was like, all right, cool. So we're just gonna do the reunion show. And so we did the reunion show. It was great. And then we got an offer to do, I think New York, East Coast reunion. It was New York City and New Jersey. And we did it with DRI, which was amazing shows, both of
Awesome.
them. Yeah. And then we came back and they were like, do you guys want to do Mexico City? We got offers to, I've actually turned down so many tours and like labels and all these things because I honestly
Must be
don't,
hard.
yeah, I turned it all down for my own reasons. First of all, I'm still jaded from Eric Records. And as I told you before, I stated earlier, it's like it's a whole different like playing field now, and I don't really know if that's what I really want to do. Like I can Bonded, not that we're like the biggest name, but it's we still bring people, and I feel like we can do it all ourselves. Really, like we're getting offers now that I'm turning down, like big festivals in Europe and blah blah, because I really want to focus on the new album and music because we're pushing it back, pushing it back, pushing it back. That because these shows that they offer us, and we don't really have the time like we did when we were kids. And I mean, people have jobs and all kinds of shit. And so it's like whenever we do get an offer, like we recently did Japan this year, and it's like, okay, we gotta take some time off to like practice, and we got to do like this hour and a half set and blah blah blah. So like that takes time. So that takes time away from actually, recording the music and doing all that stuff. Plus our jobs, we all have full-time jobs, and some of us have mortgages and all that crap. So it's a little bit different than it was before. So now we're like, okay, you know what? Let's kind of like take this time off and really, really focus on the music. And during that time, Alex ended up getting an offer with Devil Driver. So Alex ends up being like, you know what? Like he wanted to do both things. He's like, I'm gonna do Devil Driver and I'm gonna do Bonded. But then he had to sign some sort of exclusive contract that he could only do Devil Driver things. And more power to him.
Is that a
Uh,
label thing or a band thing?
I'm not 100%
Yeah,
sure. We didn't really discuss. I'm happy for him. That's what he wanted to do. No bad blood between me and Alex or the rest
cool.
of the guys. We all love him. We talk to him like, well, at least I do. I text him like at least once or twice a week. So he's also really really busy. He's the one that lives the farthest. He lives like way up. It's still LA County, but he lives like way up by like closer to like the farms. But anyways, he moved out there.
Yeah.
He
Yeah,
moved out
yeah.
there like a while back. So it was harder for him to like drive down and jam with us and all that stuff. So, but I'm happy that he's happy and hopefully like they do well for him because he deserves it. He's a fucking talented
For
guy.
sure.
When that happened, he had a thing with Conan, the Shred Talk, which he had to also, I believe, like leave and just focus on Devil Driver. And Conan let me know. I've known Conan since he was probably 13 or 14. We used to do backyard shows back in the day. Um, and he's the one that hit me up. I didn't even have to look for another guitarist. He was just like, "Hey man, I know the Bonded stuff, and I heard about Alex." And he's like, "Do you want me to fill in?" And it all started off as like a fill-in thing. And he was just like, after a while, and we started doing these shows because he did Mexico City with us, he did Japan with us, he did a few other gigs here in LA, and he fucking was like, "This is awesome!" Like, I don't have to, because in Exmortis, he's like the lead guy, and he has to take care of all the business side of things. He's like, "I just show up and play, and like, this is awesome." So he's like, we talked about it, and he's like, do you want me like, do you want me to be like a permanent member? And I was like, hell yeah, let's do it, man. And then, okay, what do I have to learn? Because we already had music going. And he's like, what do I have to learn? And I'm like, you know what? Let's like, I want you to be part of the band as well. I don't want you to just come in and be like some guy that learns the music. So we actually had to like restructure some songs we already had because I wanted to have like a Conan flavor in it as well. It wasn't just, oh,
Yeah.
this is the stuff we have and just learn it. And I want him to be part of it. Plus, he's a really good friend of ours and everybody gets along. It's a good dynamic. So that's how well, just to make the long story short, the already long ass story short,
All
that's how it
good.
all that's how it all kicked off and then where we're at now with the progress. Actually, after this show I have to go and after this podcast I have to go and like supervise them because they're gonna do some new some new guitar tracks.
Nice. Well, that's really exciting, man. And as like a fan and hearing all this new stuff, it's good because I knew about some of the history and some of
Mhm.
the things that happened. So it's really, really awesome to see that this band's like in a really healthy spot right now. And you were talking about the new music too. So how long has this new record been in the works for, like officially? I know you're
So
talking about some rewrites here, but
yeah. So officially it's been about I want to say maybe close to a year now. With the rewrites, with everything. We already had songs even before we went out to do some shows. I had ideas. Everything was already like we used like Guitar Pro and a few other things to like kind of compose things. And then we had all that in the bucket. Everything was good. And then, like I said, the Alex thing happened. So that kind of pushed us back like a few months. Conan came in. He started writing on his own. So yeah, about 6, 7, almost a year in the works with the new stuff. But now it's all concrete. Drums are done. Rhythm guitars are done. We're doing like leads now. Jerry's doing the bass, and I can't wait to
awesome.
start doing vocals. Yeah.
What do you guys use to record?
So we all do our own. We all have different DAWs. I think for them they use who's I forgot which DAW Juan uses. I think he uses Cubase. But it's a mixed bar. We all like we send ourselves WAV files back and forth, and like people use Pro Tools, people use Reaper. At the end of the day, we send it out to mix and master. The same guy that did Ignacia and stuff, he's gonna mix and master the
Awesome.
bonded stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Isn't that just so awesome nowadays that you can do that?
Yeah,
People don't have to fly out. It's so convenient.
I fucking love it. And me personally, I work better on my own. Like if I'm not like in a time constraint, I'm not like waiting for this guy, I mean, sometimes you choose the right producer or whoever it is to help you engineer, and he gets the best out of you, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes you just have a limited time, especially when you know you don't have all the money in the world, or the label only puts a certain amount of money in your thing, and you have like, hey, you have a month or you have 3 weeks, and you have to finish all this. And for me, if I'm there and I'm like, okay, this is what I thought sounded cool before I had all this recording equipment, and then you actually go and record it, and maybe it sounded really cool when you were jamming it out, but then when you actually hear it, you're like, oh fuck, I could have changed this, or maybe I can fuck around with this and experiment with this and that. And here, when I do it at home, I can do that, and I'm like, you know what, this didn't sound as cool as it sounded in my head or as it sounded in the jam room, and now I can change that. Or hey, you know what, I can experiment a little bit. Hey, let me double the vocals here, or what if I do this, or let's do some gang shouting here. Oh no, that doesn't work, take it out. So we have all the time in the world, and in all honesty, we're not in a hurry at all. I want the best that we can do, because this is it. At first, we were gonna do like an EP and singles and stuff like that, because I know that's what's hitting right now. And actually, that's, to me, that's the better route. But since this is our first thing in a really long time, I'm like, you know what? We have enough for an album. I didn't want it to be a really long album either. I didn't want something like 30, 40 minutes either, or 45 minutes or something like that. But I also didn't want it to be so short to be an EP. It's like, hey, it's a comeback album. But we plan on doing things after this album, because we still have a lot more music. Uh, Probably release singles and EPs like that.
Awesome. Well, that's great to hear, man. And we're in this new record, we're looking at like 2025. Do we
Yeah,
have an official
definitely
like
2025. I don't have an official date of 2025. It's gonna be done by the end of the year, 2024. But there is a lot of stuff in the works. Like I said, there has been labels that hit us up, and I really don't want to go down that route. But if you do
yeah,
see it come out of a label, it's either we got a really good deal or it's a distribution type of deal. I don't want to really go and do like a three record label deal, and then they pressure you to like, come on, you got to take it out every year. And I feel like the music doesn't really come out as well that way, and we're rushed to do things, and we really want to have control of what we do and how we do it. And at the end of the day, I still want to have the rights to my music and be able to distribute it however I want to. If I want to, do vinyls, if I want to do tapes, if I want to do whatever I want, it's up to me and how I want to do it. You know what I mean?
for
And I feel
sure.
like all these things with labels that schedule you to do all kinds of things, I really don't want that. And it's a lot of like I said, a lot of pressure as well. They end up giving you a loan, like a bank loan, and they want their money back, obviously. So they put you on the road a lot. And I stated before, we don't really have that time like we did before. I really do want to hit certain places and do certain things, but it's limited nowadays as opposed to when we were 17, 18, 19. Um, so I'd rather do it myself, my own way. But like I said, if we do get some sort of deal like that, it most likely will be a distribution deal.
Got it. Well, I feel like, and so much of that shit has been like so scummy, like I've heard horror stories about that. And I feel like the band has always been like very DIY. So to like bring in all these different elements, I feel like kind of defeats the purpose. And as a fan, I definitely prefer this route that you're describing. Now, what is the creative chemistry like for this new album? Like you're just saying people are just sending in their own tracks. In terms of, is everyone just writing their own like parts? Are you bouncing ideas back and forth? Like, what does that really look like? What's that whole process? And also, has that always been the process? Like, what has the creative evolution been of
So,
that?
so I feel like we're still writing the way we did even when we first met. Now, obviously, with technology, things can actually be a lot faster. We can jot down our ideas. We still chop it out in the fucking actual jam room to see if it works.
Got
But
it.
but it's so much easier to share ideas now and like, hey man, this sounds cool. Look, I wrote this whole song. Is it fucking awesome? Like blah blah. The good thing about everybody also now, as we're older, and I make it seem like we're fucking 50. The good thing about us getting signed so young and then we stopped is that we're still in our like early 30s to mid 30s. So it's not like we're like, fuck, we're fucking 55. Not that that should stop you anyways, but anyways,
Yeah.
so we all like have ideas of certain things. We kind of brainstorm how it always worked with Bonded, and it was me with certain ideas. I'm not the best guitar player. I can play a little bit of guitar. I'm not the best bass player. I can play a little bit of bass, a little bit of drums here and there, but I have an idea, a vibe of what I want the song to sound like. luckily, I have such talented guys that when I tell them these dumbass ideas I have in my head, they come up. I completely trust them because they're just that great. And I'm like, hey, I want this, blah blah blah, and they're like, oh, you mean something like this? And then they go in and they, write the whole thing down, the whole riff, whatever I try to give them, and then they bring it back to me like, this is what I got. I'm like, oh, this is fucking cool. And they're also not offended if I'm like, nah, that's not really what I wanted for this song. And like, all right, cool. Let's go back and like rewrite it. And that to me is the best fucking thing because I've had to work with other people before. I won't name any names, not in this band, but in other projects I've had where it's very hard to work with someone because they fall in love with their riffs or they fall in love with their thing. Oh, I, I spent 2 weeks working on this, so we better have it on the disc. And it's like, oh man, like it's cool that you spent two weeks on this, but sometimes that stuff doesn't work. Sometimes something that you made in like 10 minutes just sounds so much cooler than what you just did on this. And I get it, it's hard work and you spend so much time in it, but sometimes it is what it is. But yeah, with Bonded, I mean the fucking creative juices are there, man. Everybody's so pumped to do it. Everybody's and I'm also glad that we waited a little bit longer to rewrite everything and everything because once we started making once we started doing shows and playing the old songs again, I feel like everybody started feeling that energy again. Like specifically Juan, so he's the one that's been consistently in Bonded. So
Yeah.
he wrote Aftermath, and that's to me is completely different than the first two albums. At least riff wise, it was a little bit more gent, a little bit more groovy than I would
Yeah.
have liked. And so I wanted that to kind of like get out of the system. No offense to that album, whatever they did with them, that's them. But like to me, it's like I wanted to bring back Feed the Beast and Exile to Earth with a modern twist. Because obviously, like I said, these guys still are fucking killer players. But I want that essence, that vibe, that aesthetic that we had in that moment, and bringing it to life now in 2024, 2025. And so I feel like doing these shows and him getting the crowd reaction and him realizing like, holy shit, this stuff we did back then is really giving people like life and people are loving it, gave him the energy and the inspiration to go back and write some of these riffs that were similar to that with, like I said, a modern twist. Right now, like I said, it just works out. Everybody works on the riffs. They have ideas. They bring it to the table. We upload it to the drive. We pick and choose certain things that we're like, oh, this sounds cool. Say Jerry goes in there and he'll be like, hey, I was jamming to this riff that you made. What do you think it sounds like? And then we go from there. Eventually, we create a whole song without drums. We have like fake drums, whatever it is, and then we go into the jam room and Steven comes up with something super cool.
That's really awesome to hear, man. And yeah, no, there definitely is an emphasis on groove on that record.
Hmm.
Exiled is my favorite. I love how it got much more, a little more technical, and it was just tighter. I feel like that's like one of the tightest the band's ever been. So what you describing the new record here is making me very, very excited.
Oh, so you're gonna really love the new record. I
Awesome.
My thing is like I want to bring what would have happened if, you know, I would have never left and we're doing the next record. Um, Obviously with no more time now, more maturity, what I know about music, what they know about music now, and bringing all that together. I think it's gonna be fucking crazy. Like, there's a lot of songs that like remind me of Exiled, but like I said, like amplified. It's super cool. We don't tone down the tech. There's a lot more tech, but then it's also very thrashy.
Cool.
So I feel like it's a mature version of Exile, but still having a lot of fun, like Feed the Beast.
Awesome. Yeah. And I assume it isn't a concept album.
No, it's not, but it is.
It's
Like
not, but it is.
I'm continuing the story in a way. I'm
Oh,
not.
cool.
I'm not. A lot of the songs are written as a continuation of what would have happened 15 years after Exile to Earth because it's what's happening in real life. But like in that world, uh, I wouldn't connect all the songs together, but they are. I mean, I love to dabble with that stuff. I do that with Ignoxia and Macrocosm. I've always been a sci-fi nerd, but I feel like Exile being like B sci-fi cheesy in a way, but still cool. Uh, this new album is gonna be more horror sci-fi themed, which I
Cool.
love.
Me too, man. Me too. I like, especially, I binged all these horror movies in October, so that's very excited to hear, man.
Sick.
Yeah, yeah. So, where does that concept come from? Does it come from a book? Was it just something in your head?
So it's a lot of different things. I got inspired by, I'm a big Silver Surfer fan. So I got inspired by Silver Surfer. There's one of the first comic books, Galactus brings him to Earth and then he's exiled to Earth. That's where the title comes from. I know there's a
Got
book
it.
named Exiled to Earth, but I got it. A lot of people don't know that I got that from Silver Surfer. But then I kind of just branched off that. It's not necessarily a Silver Surfer concept album. I just kind of wanted a post-apocalyptic kind of mix of all my favorite sci-fi movies in one. Did you see little different concepts of different things, aliens and living in a post-apocalyptic world, a little bit of a, Mad Max. There's a lot of things in there that I really loved, and luckily at that time, well, still Jerry was a big part of writing that. He's big into that shit too, and so we had a lot of fun writing. We stayed up a lot, like nights really late, writing those riffs, writing those lyrics. So he was a lot of help. That's why I'm so glad that he's on board for this new album because he helps me a lot when it comes to that material.
Awesome. And that's so fucking exciting, man. And I know you're talking about like releases in the future. We'll have like, 4 full records under the band's belt at that point. That's a lot of material for a potential live record. Have you guys thought about that at all?
We have actually, and that's been bounced around a few times, and that's something we really want to do. But it's most likely after this album, obviously. But yeah, we really want to do something like that. That and like I stated, a lot of singles and EPs. We don't want to stop writing. We want to keep moving on. Even if once we release this new album, kind of want to keep. The guys have a lot of energy, a lot of creativity going on right now, and I want to like release that. I want to make sure that they're all like writing and having fun, and that's the main goal right now. I don't really care about labels. I don't really care about anything. I want the guys and us to have fun, and at the same time, the fan to like get what they deserve.
For sure. And just keep those, creative gears going, man, because it
For
sounds like you
real.
guys are on a roll for sure. I was listening to I love the 4 Pints of Blood demo.
Oh,
I
sure.
think I think all the third wave of thrash demos are like really good. Which is crazy to say now because we're in like the fourth wave, I'm pretty sure, with like
Yeah, yeah.
Mortalis, Labyrinth. How do you recall the conception of that demo? How it was recorded, how it was written? Was it songs written like for a while and they finally got recorded? Were they all written at once?
Wow, you're taking me back a few. I think what was that released in 2006?
6.
Fuck. So,
Seems like a
uh,
lifetime ago at
yeah,
this
yeah, yeah,
point.
it does. I guess to talk a little bit about 4 Pints of Blood, we have to go back in that time and what we were doing. So, just to give you a little bit of background,
Go for it.
I was before thrash metal or any sort of metal. I come from a punk background, very DIY, very like I never been in any other bands that were metal. I was only in punk bands before that, all through high school, and then one right before Bonded. Um, I never even got into metal the traditional way. I think people, and this is not for everyone, but a lot of people I talk to usually are like, oh, they like Iron Maiden, Ozzy Osbourne, the classics, Judas Priest, and then they get into heavier stuff. And for me, it wasn't that way. For me, it was like I loved like around that time there was like a big wave, the early 2000s. There was a big wave of like street punk, um, which I got caught into. It's not my favorite now, but at that time it was like the Casualties, the Unseen, like that was really popular in my area. All these venues were getting sold out, and with that, that opened my eyes because they would wear shirts of like Dead Kennedys, Bad
Mhm.
Brains, which is like, what I really love now. DRI, like a lot of crossover stuff and a lot of hardcore punk stuff. Um, and that opened my eyes to that. So then I started making those type of bands, which it took me into getting into like crossover with DRI, Suicidal Tendencies, which led me to go into grindcore and death metal before I even got into Iron Maiden or Judas Priest.
Which is
I was
crazy. That's
Yeah, so to me,
awesome.
I went the whole other way. And then when people were like, "Don't you do you listen to like metal?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah," and I would bring out like a Terrorizer CD or I would bring out like Obituary, and they were just like, "What the fuck?" Like, because they were listening to like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, and it took me a while to actually get it. I love Iron Maiden now and Judas Priest, but it took me a while because I'm just like, this isn't heavy enough. You know what I mean? It was just weird to me, and I like the aggressive angst, all that stuff that stuff brought because then I also got into like a lot of crust, and so I come from that background. And when Bonded was first even thought of, I was kind of tired of trying to make bands in the punk scene because a lot of people weren't taking it as serious. Not that punk musicians aren't serious, but at least the people
And
around my
the bands you were a part of, is there any music out there that
I
you
don't think
recorded
so.
with
We
them?
we recorded like on tapes, like
Got it.
and like
Yes.
yeah, it's like so old school. And it was this is like probably like 2001, 2002, and
Nice.
like me still being in high school. But no, the last band I was in punk, it was a band called Systematic Chaos. It was like a super anarcho band, and I thought I knew everything about the world at the time. And it was so, but it was a cool experience. We did a lot of cool stuff, at least in our area. We never like toured anywhere. It was just like up and down California.
Cool.
Um, but so I got tired of it because a lot of people never really took their instrument serious, never really wanted to like. And I'm not saying be a, like some sort of virtuoso or anything, but just let's get shit together, let's get music done, let's record, let's do all this stuff. And people were like, yeah, let's get drunk, let's. Nobody wanted to practice. That's basically the thing there. And that's when I was like, you know what? I kind of want to like branch out and do something else. And I wasn't even thinking of doing a thrash metal band. It was more like I want to do in my head, I was just like, I want to do like an 80s inspired type of band, like, but like fast, aggressive. And I don't, if it has solos, cool. If it didn't, I wasn't even thinking of even meeting a guy like Alex, which I was like, God damn, this guy's fucking insane. Um, and at that time, it was during MySpace time. So I remember putting up a bulletin on the MySpace like thing, being like, "Hey, I'm looking for a band in this type of style." And one of my friends' girlfriends was like, "Hey, I went to school with this guy that really likes Ozzy Osbourne, Randy Rhoads type of stuff, and like he's never been in a band though, and he's really good. You should check him out. I'll give you his info." And I was like, I don't know. I've met a lot of guys that say they're pretty good, but then when you go meet them, they kind of like are all right. And so I'm like, I wasn't going in there with high hopes, and this guy was Alex, and so I go to his house. He doesn't live that far from me. He lived in the next city over, and I hit him up. He opens the door. This fucking tall guy. He's like 6'5" or something, and I'm 5'9". So I was just like, oh shit, this guy. And then he opens the door. He has this like he's never been in a band, very shy guy. I think he was homeschooled for a long time, so he was a little bit socially awkward. And I was like, and I come from a whole different background. I'm like, I come from the hood. Like I saw a lot of stuff I shouldn't have seen at a very young age. So we were complete opposites, and it was such a funny thing. It was like we were like in a buddy fucking like cop sitcom kind of shit. And so I go into his room. He has like all these Iron Maiden posters and Randy Rhoads. He loved Randy Rhoads. And like he had this I remember him having like this fake. Well, he had his Ibanez. He loves Ibanez. One of his RG blue Ibanez's, but he also had this other like knockoff Fender. I think it was called the Johnson, and it was all like scalloped or whatever it's called, like Malmsteen. And I was like, "What is this?" I've never even heard of Malmsteen at the time. And he's like, "Oh, it's like you never heard of it?" And then he starts playing some Malmsteen. He starts playing some Steve Vai. And he's like, all right, I'm ready to play some stuff. And I'm like, what? I've never heard anyone play this stuff like in real life. You know what I mean? I was used to like these punk bands, everybody's doing like power chords and whatever shit that I'm really into, but I've never actually seen a guy play like these solos and this lead stuff flawlessly. Not just like, oh, I'm trying and yeah, you hear it in Guitar Center or whatever, but this guy was like, I'm like, what? How old are you? Like, and then, he's like, no, I don't think I'm good enough yet. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, you're fucking insane. And so he was comparing himself to like a Steve Vai, Paul Gilbert. And I get it. And it's good. But at the same time, I'm like, man, you're way too good for what I'm thinking. Because I was thinking more punk. And so that's how we got together and started writing songs. And so he was just kind of giving me bands that I never really was a fan of at the time. Like he would give me stuff like Razor X, which I really love now, Cacophony, all these bands that he was really into, but I had never heard of at the time. And I was like, yeah, a lot of Ozzy Osbourne stuff, a lot of Randy Rhoads. He's like, I want kind of do something like this, but then I was like, but I want it to be a little bit more aggressive. And he's like, all right. So we kind of met in the middle, and that's how Four Pints came to be. Me and him wrote most of that stuff, and then the rest of the guys came in. Juan came in after. He got actually kicked out of a death metal band because he was doing too many leads. And so I remember I had a friend that was like, "Hey, I have a friend. He's in this death metal. I forgot it was a local death metal band." but they don't want him because he's doing too many leads. And I guess the other guy was the lead player, and I don't know, they had like some problems with him doing leads. But I'm like, hey, that sounds perfect to me. I'll match him up with Alex. He came into the picture and he was like, cool, I'll just run the stuff you guys have. Um, and then we found Carlos, the drummer, because he got kicked out of I think he was in a Metallica cover band, and they were just like, oh, we need someone older. He was the youngest at the time. I think when I first met him, he was probably like 15. Um, and so they were like, no, we want someone like in the that can go into like bars and play these bars. I guess they wouldn't let him in. So he got kicked out of it. And then we all met. Basically, we all met through like somebody's like ex-girlfriend or somebody's friend's girlfriend that were like, hey, my buddy got kicked out of a certain band. And so that's how that core. Oh, and then Ruben. But Ruben, I knew him. Him and his sister, him and his sister went to school with me. Well, his sister went to school with me, and he went to the same high school as me. So I knew Ruben for a while. Um, and so he came in. He was more influenced by like Primus and like Red Hot Chili Peppers, like very bass driven type of bands. Uh, so that's why it's such a trip that Bonded came to be because
That's
like
so cool.
yeah, we were
So
all
cool.
like influenced by like completely different things. But I thought that made us stand out, and also we weren't really going for a sound. And it's also a little bit funny and kind of tongue in cheek now and ironic that we're named Bonded by Blood because you would think like we were like gonna be like Exodus, fucking like I don't know, tribute band or an Exodus, like we're gonna sound exactly like them, and I feel like we don't. If anything, as we go further on, we sound completely different. I'm very inspired by Exodus, and we named it because of that. But at the time, also, I feel like this was 2000 what 2005 when we were like planning out names. We didn't really know anybody around here that was listening to thrash metal, so I never thought that we would have gotten signed and done all these things. And then people are like, "Oh, couldn't you think of a better name or whatever?" And it's like you got to understand that at that time, we didn't. Every band that was playing around us was playing like metalcore or they were still stuck in like
Avenged
doing
Sevenfold shit.
yeah, but they were also still stuck in like a lot of bands we played with in the beginning uh like if we played with any metal band, it was always like kind of like new metal kind of bands, like people like Gen X type of people that were still playing that type of music. So especially where we grew up in the Inland Empire. So it was like of California, and it was a lot of those bands, that or metalcore. And so we were like, oh fuck, nobody listens to like the type of music we're listening to, and so nobody's even gonna know. And even before we got signed, I remember telling Eric like maybe we should like change the name or something like, and then they're like, no, no, it's fine. And so now I love it. I feel like even the irony of it is super cool. And then we ended up like touring with Exodus and all that shit. So that's super cool too.
Yeah, what was there like what was it like meeting them for the first time? It's like, hey, so our name is
So even before we toured with them, we played with them at the Whiskey in LA.
cool.
This is before we even got signed. I think we got signed like 2 weeks later after that. But we played with them. It was us, Warbringer. I don't know if Fuel by Fire was there, but it was us, Warbringer, and Exodus. And I remember them looking up at the marquee, being like, "Bonded by Blood," because we were like, our van was parked right outside, and I remember seeing Gary Holt like in front of the marquee, and he's being like, "What the hell?" And then he's seeing people with like "Bonded by Blood" shirts on that obviously are not Exodus shirts, and he was just like asking them like, "Who is this band?" and blah blah. And then I went up to him, being like, "Hey man, really big fan. We're the guys from Bonded." And he's like, "Oh, what the fuck?" Like, but he was always cool. He never like there's a few times that him and even Zetro mentioned us in like different interviews and stuff when they asked him about us,
Awesome.
especially back then when we were a little bit popping more. They'd be like, "Oh, we're so happy that." He's like, "We never would have thought like when we first started this band that someone was going to name themselves after them." And then they're also really cool and they're actually talented. So never any bad blood, never any like shade. Cause I know some of the times like these older bands give a little bit of shade to the new school and stuff. If you want to consider us the new school now, I feel like we're not the new school anymore. We're like the, we're like the middle school. Uh, and so,
Well, definitely newer for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, 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 yeah. And but yeah, super cool. And then we went on tour with them. Awesome. I got to do I wish there was video of this. I'm sure there is somewhere. I haven't found it, but I did Bonded by Blood with them in Miami, Florida, or was it Tampa?
Ooh, that's
Tampa or
awesome.
Miami. It wasn't even planned. He was just like, "Come up," and they started playing Bonded, and I did Bonded by Blood with them. Super cool. I think I did a lesson in violence with them somewhere else too. It was super cool. So That
Talk
was
about a
awesome.
bucket list item right
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
Like one of because like Bonded by Blood is like maybe the most well, not maybe, but like is the most important thrash metal record
Oh yeah, yeah.
in thrash metal history. A lot of people say Kill 'Em All or Slayer's debut, but that first Exodus album, if it I think what happened, it was just like the demo was spread so much where by the time the record came out, everyone was like, yeah, kind of old news,
Yeah, yeah.
but just such a legendary
Oh,
record.
to me, it was just like it. I feel like it captures the essence of time of that time, and also like it's so aggressive and so like raw. I love it. It just this is what brought me to it because like as I stated, I'm a big into punk. I like the rawness. I like it, but they were just like to me, it gives that vibe. Them and Violence, the
Oh, for
fucking
sure.
it's just
Sean,
a
man.
yeah, it's just a big influence on me as well when it comes to like thrash metal stuff, Violence, and then talking to Sean now and knowing him and like we played with him a few times, which also was a bucket list off. Like I've always wanted to do a show with Violence, and I never thought they would be back together, but that's super cool. Um, Talking to him and then also hearing in interviews when he talks how like he was influenced by a lot of like punk stuff, then I'm like, oh, there it is. That's why it sounds like what it sounds like, and which is my big influence as well. So I feel like, oh, cool, because a lot of people used to compare my vocals to Sean's, like saying like, oh, like you do that fast, like just like he does, and so it was cool. And he is a big influence. I don't think I was doing it, at least not consciously doing it like to copy him. It's just something that I learned from growing up and just being in these like super raw power violence type of grindy type of bands that I'm like, oh, cool. I'm just gonna move that over to the thrash metal stuff I'm doing, and it so happens to sound kind of like Violence, I guess,
For sure,
and
man.
bail off a little bit too. I don't know. There's a lot of things that I think kind of influenced that and subconsciously came to be.
Yeah, yeah. And I think a little, maybe educated guess here, but a little bit of Death Angel
Oh yeah, yeah, I love Death
as
Angel.
well. Yeah, yeah. Awesome, awesome. Well, hey, man, it's been great meeting you, and really thank you for taking the time out to talk to me
Oh
today.
no, thank you, man.
Been an absolute pleasure. Before we end things off, what's the best way for people to stay in touch and stay updated with everything Bonded by Blood? And what's the future of the band looking like right now, generally?
So you can reach us at Bonded by Blood Official on Instagram, TikTok. We just made the TikTok not that long ago. We're gonna start doing more stuff on there. Juan's very active on there. He gets like a billion likes on every guitar shit he does. So we're gonna
I
have
believe
him
it.
like we're gonna have him like take care of the TikTok because he's really good at it. And then Facebook, if you still use Facebook, we're on there as well. Bonded by Blood. As far as the future of the band, once this album comes out, we have a lot of good stuff. We're actually announcing some stuff we're gonna do soon for the next year. Can't say much now, but it's going to be some festivals and some stuff like that. But we're also got like a beer coming out at a local brewery that's going to be for our 15th anniversary as a band.
What's it
Um,
called?
the beer,
Yeah.
I can't tell you yet,
Oh, okay.
but it has to do with blood. It's going to be like an orange blood IPA. It's going to be cool.
Cool.
And then so we're working with a local brewery here that really likes us and is like all about metal. So that's super cool. And we're gonna do like we're planning to do a free show for that. So it's gonna be first come first serve. I know that's gonna be a fucking packed up the ass. So that's gonna be cool. And then we have a lot of things in the works. I feel like we're gonna do some stuff in South America, festivals, some stuff in Europe, going back to Asia, and maybe hitting up Australia. There's a lot of stuff in the back burner that we're gonna pull the trigger on once the album's out.
Awesome. Well, that's so exciting, man. Thank you again for doing this. It's been an absolute honor. Big fan of the band. Cannot wait to listen to this new record. I'm Brandon Battick, and this is Disturbing the Priest.
It's death! I've just seen death!